I never imagined that the man I had loved for 22 years would be the one to tear my world apart. But the first clear warning hit me on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was standing in our kitchen, the familiar scent of simmering pasta sauce filling the air, when David's phone buzzed sharply on the counter. He snatched it up far too quickly, his face lighting up with a soft, private smile that wasn't meant for me at all. "Work," he muttered, already turning toward the hallway. Before the door clicked shut behind him, I caught the low, intimate whisper. "Miss you already. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My stomach twisted into a painful knot. I told myself it was nothing, just stress from the office. But deep inside, something felt terribly, irreversibly wrong. In the weeks that followed,
Visit says us.
The warning signs multiplied quickly and relentlessly, each one chipping away at the trust I had built over decades. His phone now stayed face down on every surface, even during our quiet dinners. He changed his passcode without a word of explanation. Gym sessions that used to be predictable stretched later and later into the night, and he would return home smelling of a sharper, unfamiliar cologne that lingered on his clothes. Small, unexplained amounts began vanishing from our joint account. $500 here, $1,000 there. When I asked, he brushed it off with that familiar, easy shrug. "Business expenses, Elena. You know how it is." Then the credit card statement arrived in the mail, showing a lingerie purchase in size 2, something I could never wear. Doubt sharpened into cold, undeniable suspicion. I wasn't being paranoid, yet I was slowly waking up to a nightmare. One evening, I returned home earlier than usual from a routine doctor's appointment. As I stepped inside, I overheard him speaking on speakerphone in his home office. A young woman's voice drifted out, bright, playful, and teasing. "You're spoiling me, David. I love it when you talk like that." He responded with the same warm, unguarded laugh that had once been reserved only for me during our early years together. My chest tightened. I backed away silently, my heart pounding, and drove around the block twice until I could steady my breathing and compose my face. That same night, I confronted him directly across the kitchen table. "Who is she?" He didn't even flinch. "Just the new assistant, Sophia. You'd like her," he said calmly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Yeah, I wanted so desperately to believe him. I tried with everything I had, but the lie hung heavy and cold between us, impossible to ignore any longer. The real, shattering blow came only a few days later. Driven by a growing unease I could no longer suppress, I followed him one night after he claimed he had a late investor dinner. He drove straight to a sleek, modern apartment building just 10 minutes from our family home. I parked in the shadows across the street, my pulse hammering loudly in my ears. At exactly 9:47 p.m., she stepped out into the glow of the streetlights. Sophia, mid-20s, with long dark hair cascading down her back and a confident stride that made her seem far more worldly than her age suggested. David stepped out of his car, pulled her into his arms without hesitation, and then kissed her with a raw hunger and passion I hadn't seen from him in years. It wasn't a gentle or quick kiss. It was deep, desperate, and intensely intimate. I sat frozen behind the steering wheel, bile rising hot in my throat, watching the man I had loved and built an entire life with for 22 years give himself completely to someone else. By the time they disappeared inside the building together, still laughing softly, my marriage was already over. I drove home in a numb, disoriented fog, threw up violently in the guest bathroom, and sat huddled on the cold tile floor until the first light of dawn. That single kiss burned permanently and painfully into my mind. The next morning, with trembling hands, I showed him the photos I had managed to take the night before. He sighed heavily, and as if I were the unreasonable one, causing all the trouble. I'm in love with her, Elena. It just happened. 22 years of marriage, 2 children now in college, and a shared lifetime of memories collapsed into one devastatingly simple sentence. He wanted a divorce. He said Sophia made him feel truly alive again. And then the real, systematic betrayal unfolded with frightening efficiency. While I was still reeling from the emotional shock, barely able to function, David moved with cold calculation and speed. He quietly transferred our family home into a new trust, naming Sophia as the primary beneficiary after his death. He drained our joint savings accounts under the guise of business needs. He changed the beneficiary on his substantial life insurance policy. And he even signed over nearly half the shares of his successful commercial real estate company to her as a so-called business gift. My lawyer reviewed the documents and called it aggressive asset protection. I called it calculated theft, plain and simple. By the time the divorce papers were signed and finalized, I was left with little more than my car, a few boxes of clothes, and a savings account that had been stripped down to almost nothing. Our children were furious with their father, but also deeply scared for me. With a heavy heart, I packed 2 suitcases and moved into my longtime friend Rachel's spare room, feeling like a ghost haunting the ruins of the woman I used to be. Grief slammed into me with brutal force. I lost my appetite completely. Sleep became almost impossible, interrupted by endless nightmares.
Pesadas.
The long nights blurred together into painful replays of that kiss, that laugh, and every lie that had paved the way to this moment. My emotions evolved rapidly and intensely. Initial doubt sharpened into piercing suspicion. Suspicion deepened into raw fear for my future. Fear grew into an all-consuming obsession with uncovering the truth. And that obsession finally hardened into a cold, focused anger that gave me a new sense of purpose and resolve. I refused to disappear quietly or allow him to erase me without consequence. Determined now, I hired Marcus, a tough, experienced ex-cop who had become a no-nonsense private investigator. Sitting across from him in his cluttered downtown office, I looked him straight in the eye and said plainly, "Well, I want everything." He studied me for a long moment and warned gravely that pursuing this could turn very ugly and personal. Within just a few days, he delivered the first shocking revelations. Sophia wasn't who she pretended to be. Her real name was Sophie Kowalski, originally from another state. She had a disturbing pattern, targeting older, successful married men, gradually draining their finances, and leaving behind messy, destructive endings. One of her previous partners had attempted suicide after losing nearly everything. Police reports existed in the background, but nothing had ever stuck because the transfers always appeared consensual on paper. Meanwhile, David had been secretly funneling company funds through hidden shell accounts. Luckily, I still retained some old administrative access from the years when I had helped set up the accounting system myself. Late at night, while Rachel slept, I began carefully copying files onto a secure drive, every single click of the mouse, feeling like a dangerous gamble. To dig even deeper and get closer to the truth, I created a carefully crafted fake online profile under the name Lena, presenting myself as a recently divorced financial consultant with means. Sophia's public Instagram feed was filled with glamorous luxury posts and polished lifestyle shots. I began leaving thoughtful, engaging comments on her pictures. Within 2 weeks, we were exchanging private messages. She viewed Lena as harmless, wealthy, and potentially useful to her world. Not long after,
bem simples.
she invited me to meet for coffee at a trendy downtown cafe with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. Sitting directly across from the woman who had upended my entire existence, I forced a warm, convincing smile and listened with rapt attention. Sophia wasn't a one-dimensional villain. She was sharp, highly intelligent, and ambitious. She even revealed a flicker of genuine vulnerability when she admitted quietly over her drink, "Sometimes I worry I'm just a temporary phase for him, you know?" That small human crack in her armor made her far more dangerous and unpredictable, not less. David, meanwhile, was growing visibly paranoid. He called me late one night, his voice slurred with whiskey and edged with fear. "Someone's been digging through my office files."
Oh, if it's you.
I hung up without giving him the satisfaction of a response, adrenaline surging hot through my veins. Marcus continued uncovering more damaging details. Large offshore wire transfers and secret audio recordings Sophia had made of their most private conversations, clearly intended as future leverage. That chilling discovery hit me like ice water. This wasn't merely a passionate affair. It was a meticulously planned con. David was simply her next intended victim. That realization marked the point when the danger became truly personal and immediate. Sophia soon began pulling back from her messages with Lena, her replies growing shorter and more guarded. One tense evening, I was parked discreetly near their favorite upscale restaurant, observing from a safe distance when David unexpectedly walked right past my car. As Sophia glanced over in my direction, her eyes narrowing with clear suspicion. I pulled away as calmly and quickly as I could, my heart slamming violently against my ribs, convinced she might have recognized me. The very next morning, an anonymous text landed on my burner phone. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." A fresh wave of fear shot through me. Marcus warned me sternly that people like Sophia and her connections didn't play by any rules and often resorted to intimidation. Despite the rising threats, I refused to back down. We filed an emergency court motion to freeze all contested assets. At the same time, I quietly launched an anonymous GoFundMe campaign supporting betrayed spouses. It began gaining unexpected traction and attention within our wider social circles. David responded by screaming threats during frantic phone calls. Fool! Sophia sent her own chilling warnings to back off immediately. I made sure to record every single conversation for protection. But then came the devastating setback that nearly destroyed my entire carefully constructed plan and broke my spirit. I arranged what I believed would be the decisive meeting at our old family house, framing it as a routine session to sign the final paperwork. They arrived together, holding hands and radiating smug confidence. The thick dossier of evidence sat openly on the dining table under low lights. I played the key recordings and methodically laid out the financial transfers. David's face drained of all color, turning ashen. Sophia's confident mask cracked visibly. She looked genuinely scared for a fleeting moment, almost human in her vulnerability. Now, when I demanded they immediately sign everything back over to me, she exploded in sudden anger, lunging across the table and knocking papers and documents everywhere in a chaotic flurry. In the heat of the moment, my phone slipped from my grip and hit the floor. Before I could reach it, she snatched it up and deleted the critical main recording in seconds. "You have nothing now," she hissed triumphantly, her eyes blazing. David stood there hesitating, his expression torn with conflict. For one terrifying, heart-stopping heartbeat, I genuinely feared he might still choose her side completely. Marcus, who had been waiting silently in the adjacent room as backup, stepped in quickly to de-escalate, but the damage had already been done. One of the most important pieces of evidence was irretrievably gone. They both stormed out of the house, and I remained alone in the now empty, echoing rooms, my body shaking uncontrollably, realizing with crushing clarity that my perfect plan had just collapsed spectacularly in front of me. The assets stayed locked in frustrating legal limbo. David immediately threatened aggressive countersuits. For 2 long, agonizing, sleepless weeks afterward, I barely ate or rested, convinced I had lost everything once more, and that my fight had been completely in vain. That painful, humiliating failure shattered me temporarily, but it also forged my determination into something sharper and unbreakable. I returned to Marcus with a renewed, fiercer focus. Together, we dug even deeper into the shadows and successfully recovered a second, hidden set of recordings from an earlier backup device I hadn't known existed. Days, I rebuilt the entire case far more carefully, methodically, and quietly than before, leaving no loose ends. In parallel, the GoFundMe campaign continued expanding, generating growing public pressure and an outpouring of support from unexpected places. Then, in a crucial turning point, one of Sophia's previous victims reached out to me completely anonymously, providing vital additional financial documents and links that helped expose and tie her entire network of schemes together. The tide finally, decisively began to turn in my favor. I called them back to the house for one last, carefully prepared meeting. This time I had secure multiple backups of every single piece of evidence. The atmosphere was tense, the lights deliberately low. The dossier was now thicker and more damning than ever. And when I played the recovered recordings and presented the complete, irrefutable picture, David looked physically ill, his hands trembling. Sophia attempted to deny and deflect everything, but her voice cracked with unmistakable panic and fear. All traces of smugness had vanished, replaced by raw desperation. I delivered the final choice without emotion: sign everything back over to me immediately, or prepare to face full public exposure, potential civil lawsuits from multiple other victims, and the total, irreversible destruction of David's professional reputation and business. This time, David signed the documents first, his hands shaking visibly with defeat. Sophia stared directly at me with a complex mixture of pure hatred and reluctant, bitter respect. "You're smarter than I thought," she muttered under her breath before turning and walking out the door for the very last time. The court hearing that followed moved surprisingly swiftly once all the evidence was presented. The judge carefully reviewed the full file, including the documented pattern of behavior stretching across multiple states, and ruled decisively and heavily in my favor on every single count. David lost effective control of his company. Sophia lost her manipulative hold on both him and the assets she had worked so hard to claim. They moved out of the house quietly, without any further confrontation or fanfare. I sold the property at a fair price, paid off every remaining debt, and carefully placed the rest of the recovered funds into a protected trust designed for my children's future and my own security. Then months later, David called me exactly once. His voice sounded broken, small, and utterly defeated. She played me completely from the start. I lost everything that mattered. I listened in silence for a brief moment, feeling nothing but a profound sense of closure, then hung up the phone without saying a single word. No lingering anger remained inside me, only a deep, quiet satisfaction. Today, I stand calmly in my new, peaceful condo overlooking the serene lake, watching the sunset slowly paint the water in beautiful shades of gold, orange, and soft pink. The old wedding ring rests safely inside a small drawer nearby, not as a painful reminder of betrayal, but as quiet, personal proof of everything I survived and ultimately overcame. The betrayal I endured cut far deeper than I had ever thought possible. The long, treacherous, difficult road to justice and revenge demanded every single ounce of inner strength, patience, intelligence, resilience, and courage I could summon. There were many dark, lonely moments when I felt myself almost breaking completely. Moments when I was absolutely certain I would lose it all and end up with nothing. But I refused to surrender. In the end, my husband gave away everything he had worked for to his young girlfriend. And through it all, I managed to take every bit of it back, plus something infinitely more valuable than any house, company shares, or money could ever be. Myself, whole, stronger, and finally free. If you're listening to this story right now and your own world feels like it is crumbling around you because of deep betrayal, please hear these words and hold on to them. The pain is incredibly brutal. And the nights can stretch out feeling endless and completely hopeless. But you are not finished. You are only standing at the very beginning of your own powerful comeback. Fight intelligently. Stay sharp and protected at every step. And when the dust finally settles and the storm passes, you will rise again. Stronger than before, wiser from the experience, and truly beautifully free.